So how did you do last week with first-time obedience? Did anybody have any kind of success story, or was it totally frustrating to the max? Or did you even try? I know you did. I talked to you about it. Are we going to talk about it now, or are we going to do it at the end for questions? Anybody want to throw anything out there? Remember. Okay, go ahead, Maddie. How to make that happen? Well, I didn't. Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead, Abraham.
I actually tried it in my classroom, and it was surreal because it was the game. Normally, it wouldn't happen if you hadn't played this game, but hopefully, they look at it.
Why do you think the kids think it's a game? You want to guess it? You have never done this before. Like, what's up with mom? What is going on? Funny mom, right? It is, part of it is you have to start believing that it's even possible. I sometimes challenge young moms, just imagine it. Like literally in your brain, imagine that your child, here's an example for you. We would go to the bank when the guys were little, right after we learned again. So it was Clinton and Colton, and they were whatever. They're 3 years apart, so maybe 2 and 5. And I always struggled that we went into Bank of Hawaii, and they're under the table. They're running around the posts. In that process, they're hitting people. And it's not that they are bad children. They're just kind of out of control. Right? And we were challenged to like, oh my goodness, we're supposed to be raising little image bearers. We're supposed to be teaching them to think of others and to respect other people's property. So we came up with, we prayed about it, and it's like, okay, boys, this is what you're going to do. When we walk inside the bank, there are 2 little empty chairs right there. From this point on, you're just going to crawl up onto those little chairs and sit down. You may put your hands in your lap. If an adult talks to you, yes, you may answer them, but otherwise you just need to be quiet. You can look around, you can smile, but that's where you need to be. Okay, how do you think that went? I literally believe they could do it. I actually believe they could do that. Like, we can do this, guys, we can do this. And I think the first time I actually rewarded them. And they did. They just marched in. Okay, this is what we're doing. I'm going to hold your sister. You get up there. Please don't let anyone just steal you, but just stay there. And, you know, you're in Molokai, for heaven's sakes. The thing about it was it blew the minds of every other parent that walked in there. They would be like, how do you get your kid to do that? And then after that, the kids are like, can we go to the bank? Can we go to the bank? Why, honey, do you want to go to the bank? People, like the lady, the little teller, kept lollipops for them because they were so like, who does that, right? You have to start believing that God has equipped you as a parent to be able to help your kid become the little image bearer that God created them to be. The trouble is, some of you aren't yet convinced that it's worth it. And you're not even, some of you are like, well, I don't want a kid that sits on a chair with his hands in his lap. Like, that's like a little robot. Well, you got to work through that. I can't tell you what your convictions are. I only know what ours were. And as a result of that, both of those, especially our 2 older boys, they're very disciplined individuals if you knew them personally. All right, so let's keep moving along because, again, I could talk forever. Ram, give me my first slide. Here's a question for you. When children first enter this world, that little cute baby, I've just seen 2 of my grandsons born here recently. When they first come out of their mom's tummy, are they naturally good? Or is there propensity to be a little angel from this time forward if I protect them from everything? David's shaking his head. What are you thinking, David? No? Where are you coming up with that? Because he has 4 of them.
Experience.
Do you think more that they are kind of a blank slate, kind of morally neutral? They're not bad, they're not good, they just are like a chalkboard that we need to write on. How many of you think that they're a blank slate? How many of you think that these little guys come out of their mother's womb depraved little individuals that are... How do we know that? That just sounds awful. This is my precious little angel. He can't be a little dirty, rotten sinner. Randy, can you give me the next slide? David said, "For I was born a sinner." Yes, from the moment my mom conceived me. Doesn't mean that he was conceived in sin. It's like from the moment life began in him, he was already struggling with sin. Why do I even care about that? Because it's going to change how you parent. If you just think they're a morally good little creature, that I just need to protect them from anything bad, then you're just going to fan their flame of goodness. However, if you understand that they are going to struggle with sin just like I do, then you embrace the responsibility that's been entrusted to you to take seriously the idea, I have to train my children to be like Christ, to be discipled, to have discipline. One thing you know that you don't have to, I want to go back to this idea of born of sinner. Do you have to teach your child to be selfish? They're really good at it. Even really little ones, right? Some of the first words ever coming out of their mouth is mine, 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 mine. Sometimes they actually look at parents and they tell parents, no. Even sometimes when you're nursing, that little child expresses their sinful nature when they bite and hurt you. And you might go, oh, well, he didn't mean it. Well, maybe that's true on the first time around, but we're now on 10. You think that child doesn't know? Well, you need to start training them. And I got some ideas for you if you need it. Listen, you can teach them. Maybe the first time around they don't understand that when they bite that hard it hurts mommy. But they should be able to learn, we don't do that way. And you call them to responsibility. All right, so parents are entrusted with this responsibility to train. Brittany, well, I don't know what I have my next slide. What is the next one? Oh, here's 2 good Bible verses. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Rather, bring them up, train them up with the discipline and the instruction that comes from the Lord. Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. We will break that down later, but I want you just to focus in on training. Some of you are athletes in here. What does training involve? Work, discipline. Part of it is you've got to learn the sport, right? There's an aspect of being taught the new move. And then the other aspect of it is I have to practice it. And as Randy as a coach will tell me time again, he's like, I just wish they would let me correct them and take it seriously, right? If they're doing something, you're shaking your head, yeah? If they're doing something wrong, as a good coach, as a good trainer, you're going to go back and correct the bad behavior. So intrinsic to training is these 2 aspects of training. Number 1, parental training involves instructing, teaching, practicing of the right behavior. But the second aspect involves stopping the bad behavior, right? 2 sides. Think of a coin. And if you try to do one without the other, it's not going to work out so good for you. It would just be, again, take it back to sports. If all you're doing is learning about the sport, but you never get any correction, you'll just keep doing that shot incorrectly and you're not going to make it. And it's frustrating, too, for anyone that is serious about helping you. All right, what are some right behaviors that we could possibly be teaching our kids? Even from little people. What would you like them to know? What does God want them to know? How about honesty? Right? Teach them not to lie. Teach them the expectation of you need to tell the truth. We have to teach our kids kindness. We have to teach them to think of others. We have to teach them gratitude. Are you teaching your children to say thank you? Or is it just, they believe it's expected. They have a sense of entitlement. Sometimes they do that with parents. Our kids should even be learning to say thank you for the food you make for them. How's that going at your tables, ladies? But if we don't teach them and train them, where are they going to learn that that's what you do? We have to teach them to be respectful of both people as well as property, right? That this chair is not theirs. They're welcome to come to church. They're welcome to sit on it. They have no right to take out a Sharpie and color on it. They have no, what makes them think they can take a pen and stab it in there because they're bored? But that's on you as parents to have to teach them, sweetie, this doesn't belong to you. Pastor Randy is allowing you to sit in it, and we have to treat it. And if you're in Pastor Randy's house, we return something better than when we got it. So not only do you get to sit on it, you need to make sure the crumbs are off of it before you leave here today. Those are just some things. We also have to teach our kids a good work ethic. Are your kids lazy? That's on you. Sorry. It's what is being taught and trained in the household that's going to help foster good children. Here's I don't know if I put it up there. So, thy word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee. So also as parents and training, you're training them in the Word of God. Listen, kids are so much better at memorizing than we are. I was reminded, I completely forgot, I was on a kick when the boys were little. You know, my boys went through a lot. The girls kind of got past the mother that was out of control, and they got a different mother. But when they were little, I was like, I just want them to know God. So there is a thing called the Westminster Confession of Faith and the Shorter Catechism. And those little guys, of course I did homeschool too, so that was in there too. But they learned when they were tiny. What is man's chief end? Man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And if you ask them today, that'll come right back to them. Why? Because when you memorize it when you're little, it somehow stays there. It just does. It's partly why we do the Awana program. Get those Bible verses in there, and it will stick with them. And God promises, hide that word in your heart. You won't sin against me. So first-time obedience will be a heck of a lot easier. All right, so we're moving into, some of you are saying, didn't work so good to do first-time obedience this week. I don't know how to make them do it. I like the idea of it, but how do I make them do it? That's where the aspect of discipline comes in. Discipline is the process of training with the intent of fostering moral development. I know these are big fat words that sound so impressive, but in reality, it's like you are training them to try to get them to develop in them a sense of right through learning and correcting, the two aspects Teaching, correcting. Listen to Proverbs 18, 8 through 9. My children, listen to your father when he corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instructions. What you learn from them will crown you with grace, and it'll be a chain of honor around your neck. It's good for your kids to learn, to listen, and to accept the correction that's coming their way. Discipline has an end goal. We're trying to create, we're trying to train up, promote godly little disciples. That's where we're going. However, it also has a finish line. I want to encourage you parents with this line. I said it 1,000,000 times to my kids. As soon as you learn, Clinton, to discipline yourself, I don't got to do it anymore. As soon as you learn, Colton, to control yourself, my job is done and we won't have all this tension between us. I'm working, you as a parent, you're working yourself out of the job. And I tell you, it's a lot harder at the front end. It is. From years 1 to 5, it's a lot of work. If you can train from 1 to 5, it's not clear sailing, but it's so much easier, especially if you train number 1. Because number 1 has influence on number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So it is well worth the investment to do this hard work on the front end. I know I have to talk fast. So there is an example in Scripture from 1 Samuel chapter 1 through 4. There was a very godly guy named Eli. Anyone know who Eli was? High priest of Israel. Like he was a pastor. He was a good man. He was the guy. And he had 2 sons, and he actually raised them in church. Any of this resonating with some of you? However, and these young boys grew up in the church, and they actually embraced the responsibility to serve as priests. Dad was a priest, part of the Levi line. So dad's a priest, the high guy, raising 2 kids in church. Now these boys are priests. However, they probably shouldn't have been, because he may have had their addressed behavior, but he was not addressing the heart. And they ended up acting very wickedly. The Bible says they seduced the young women who helped in the tabernacle. They broke the laws of sacrifice. Bad. Like that was really bad. And it says that Eli went and talked to them. Talked to their sons about sinful choices. Well, isn't that good? Shouldn't you go talk to your children about bad choices? Yeah, but talking isn't enough. You have to instruct and correct. Bare minimum, with his boys making these awful choices, he should have talked to them and said, you are not allowed to be a priest. You're going on probation until you can prove that you are suitable to be a priest. You know, there's a lot of options he would have had. He didn't take them. Maybe he was the avoidant parent that we talked about in the last session. He just didn't want to deal with any emotional conflict, so we'll just pretend it's not there. I don't know what kind of a dad he was, but he didn't address it. But the worst part about the story, when you come to 1 Samuel 4, he didn't deal with them, so God had to. And because their sin was so public, it affected all of Israel. There ended up being a battle. Israel lost terribly. Both of these guys died in the same battle. The Lord took them out because of their gross sin against him. And worse than that, when Eli was told what had happened to his boys, that both of them died at the same time, evidently he was overweight. He freaked out. He fell backward, snapped his neck, and now Eli's gone. So because of not disciplining, it ends up that all three of them are dead. The family legacy, done. Hey, it's a serious thing not to take care of your child's discipline. Even if you were looking at Adam and Eve, because they chose to do the wrong thing, into the whole world came death. That you and I are still suffering those consequences. I think, Ran, you can give me the next one. All right, so rules, discipline has to be done. Often people don't do discipline very well. And hopefully you're here tonight to try to learn, okay, I want to do it better. A few things we have to learn first. Number one, rules without relationship leads to what? Read it off your thing. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. You have a rebellious kid? I'm telling you right now, you're giving them rules and you have zero relationship with them. You have got to work on loving your child, communicating to your child, and still keeping the rules. You got to be able to talk to them. Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. But fathers, don't aggravate your children, or they'll become discouraged. You've got to learn to have relationship with them. And that's going to look different for a lot of you. But did any of you experience that? You just had rules, but your parents didn't talk to you. I even think of that man on the airplane that I told you about in the last session. Grew up in a Christian home, went to Christian schools, wants to raise his kid with a Judeo-Christian ethic, wants nothing to do with the church, wants nothing to do with Christianity, and basically because everybody in his life that was in leadership were hypocrites. They had lots of rules, but they weren't keeping them, and they had no relationship with him. And he's like, well, then talk to the hand. I want the good stuff, but not with that. Number two, Randy already talked about this last session, but expectations have to be communicated. Children will rise to the level of expectation of their parents. Many parents expect little, and guess what they get? Little. If you don't start believing that God can raise your kids up to obey his word, then they're not going to do it. It's kind of like, again, back to, I really believed Colton and Clint could sit on those chairs. And because of that was my expectation, somehow they believed it. And they did it. Impress them on your children. This is talking about God's commandments and as well as your expectations. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk down the road, when you lie down, when you get up. You should constantly be engaging your kids in conversation about the things of the Lord. And it doesn't all have to be sermons. Just talk to them. Hey, kids, you're not going to believe this. God answered my prayer today. Yeah, Mom, what happened? Well, I'll give you a better one. We really didn't have money to buy any of the kids' bikes. We were basically pretty poor when they were growing up. And Reese girl came to us and she said, Mommy, I really want a bike. I want a bike. I'm like, okay, baby, but all right, I can't get it for you. Daddy can't get it for you. However, you do have a Heavenly Father. And we have to pray for the things we need. Why don't you start praying for the things you need? And so at night, when Randy put them to bed and they're praying, Reese would say all her prayers, and she prayed for everything. But then she'd be like, and God, Mommy says that if I need a bike, I have to ask you. Can you please give me a bike because I want to ride it? And she prayed that, and she prayed that. You guys, that Christmas, I don't really quite remember all the details. We came out into our garage. Oh man, I could cry about this. We got up Christmas morning. I went outside to get something out of the freezer. There sat this precious little pink bike with all these little ribbons, whatever, just sitting in the middle of our garage. And at that point in time, I didn't know where it came from. Do you know what that did for Carice? God gave me a bike! He gave me a bike. And so now that girl can pray and by faith believe that God can provide for them. We have to talk to our kids about those kind of things. The third thing I want you to realize is consequences are the biblical means to correct bad behavior. We're stepping into a little bit of an area that makes people uncomfortable. We don't like to talk about consequences. We certainly don't like to talk about discipline, partly because all of us are on a different gamut. There's going to be people in here and like, give them lickings. Just give them lickings. Make them go outside and pull the branch off the tree and bring it to me. And let's go at it. And then you're going to have this other extreme. I could never hit my child. Never. How do you justify that through Scripture? So I know I'm walking on thin ice. Just work with me. Because part of it is you're going to have to come up with your family culture, all right? If you don't like what I have to say, perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. I'm secure in Christ. However, if you want to talk it through, I would invite you to do that. All right, so Randy, can you give me the next slide? We have to have some guidelines for our consequences. And I want to start with this idea that every child along the way, just like you, all of us, just two choices on the shelf: please God, please yourself. Every child hits that crossroads, and you're trying to direct them towards Jesus. Will they sometimes go away from Jesus? Yeah. And as a parent, when they're going away from Jesus, you're correcting it, not because they're evil and they're bad and they have to be beaten, but all you're trying to do is, babe, over there is God's favor. Over there is God's blessing. I need you to leave the road of destruction and help you get back here so that God can favor you again. And that's what you're putting before them. Two choices on the shelf. Either please God, please yourself. If you please yourself, there will be natural consequences. Next one. All right, there are some guidelines. Number one. Well, before we even do that, what kind of other consequences are a possibility? What do some of you use as a consequence or a deterrent? Besides the paddle. What's that? Sitting in the corner, little time out. What else? Taking away something that they like. What else? Pulling weeds, doing an extra chore. What else? Massaging mom's feet. Listen, guys, consequences could be literally endless. However, you have to work with your kids. And remember, you have to redirect behavior. The consequence needs to be quick and immediate, but it's redirecting behavior. You have to do something that they don't necessarily like, or it's not going to work out for you, right? All right, number one, only give a consequence when a child actually disobeys. Randy already talked about that. You should not discipline your child if they didn't know better. Hello, if you never told them that they're not allowed to take the toothpaste and squeeze it with all their might because they just want a fountain going on in the bathroom, that you can't, even though it's making you mad and you paid a lot for that toothpaste, chillax. It's now your chance to go back and say, oh, you're going to have to help me clean this up because we have a big mess, and we need to understand. I need you to know this toothpaste is expensive, and mommy needs that particular kind for sensitivity. We need to do it better. And then describe that so that the next time they do it, They did have a consequence. Number 2, you should always, though, be giving your consequences with the assurance of love. You never want your child to think that you hate them for what they just did. Right? Yeah, I am super mad right now. Ooh. However, God loves me when I was a dirty, filthy, rotten sinner. And he's put that in me. I'm created in his image. I love you. I just really don't like your sin right now. Next one. We'll go through these fast. Verbal correction. Sometimes you have a kid that's just super sensitive. Colton was that one that Randy could look at him the wrong way. Colton, knock it off. And that was it. Like, he was mortified. His little heart was broken. Done. Clinton, totally different story. Totally different story. Verbal correction, though, sometimes your kids are like, you correct them, and you've already established that there's going to be a consequence. Look, babe, if you open that refrigerator one more time without asking, the consequence will be you don't get any juice today. None. You can drink water from the sink. So what do? They go open the thing. So you just look at them. Okay, 2 choices on the shelf. What choice did you just make? I opened the fridge. And what did we say the consequence was going to be? No juice. Mama, I am thirsty. I have gullah in my back of my throat. And my kids could be pretty dramatic if they need it to be. And so if you lived with Clinton, he's very, very good at arguing. Sometimes he makes more sense than I do. But that is irrelevant. You have to, that is so good that you're feeling bad about this situation. I'm glad that you're acknowledging that you did wrong, but you're still going to get the consequence. Why do I still have to give him a consequence? Because it's my word. They have to be able to trust my word. If I said I will do it, I need to do it. Right? And because they have to be able to be secure in that I can. Number 4, you gotta remain calm. I have just seen so many parents lose their minds when they're disciplining their children. Chill. They've made a choice. Little dude. 2 choices. Make your choice, suffer the consequence. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing at that point. So you chose to open the fridge, no juice. You chose to keep the fridge shut, you have the favor of God. Take yourself out of the denominator. You know, I was so worked up because I really thought, as that first-time parent, oh, if my child will love me, he will obey me. Because God says, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. If you love mom, you'll obey hers. It made sense to me. So when he didn't obey me, suddenly I'm thinking, he doesn't love me. Well, it's ludicrous to think that. A child does. They want to please but he had his own sin issues going on. I would have been so much better off to just separate myself and calm down. Number 5, give the consequence with adequate firmness. I have to question some of you that are saying, we're talking about first-time obedience, and they think it's funny. Maybe that it's the tone in which you're delivering it, where you got to go, no, mommy needs business. And you guys know that tone with your own parents. You know when they hit it. You know it. And some of them were crazy out there. A really good friend of mine that was a missionary in Haiti, whenever she was like zeroing in on consequences, she went down to a whisper. Mrs. Lee, she just brought that down. And she would be like, I said no. And those kids knew. She meant no. Number 6, your consequence should really depend on their age. Hello. If they're 2 years old, you're not taking the car keys away from them. You've got to like match the consequence with actually the infraction and with the age. Someone said they put their kid in the corner. If they're 2 years old, you're not going to leave them in the corner for an hour. They don't even understand what an hour is, right? So make it age appropriate. 7, individualized consequences to the child's temperament. Again, Colton was soft-hearted, Clinton, not so much. So his consequence was always, Clinton liked to be where everybody was, believe it or not, and he liked to be the oldest son. So Randy discovered a way of dealing with Clint. Okay, son, you're going to go to bed before all your siblings. It's as if you took a knife and shoved it in his heart, that he was submitted to going to bed earlier than even little Kale, who's 10 years younger than him. Make your consequences known, if-then statements, right? These are part of making your plan very clear. If you, help me out, what do you get mad at your kids for? If you hit your brother, then Daddy is going to hit you, so you know how it feels. And then, as soon as he walks over to his brother, which a lot of times they do it immediately, because they want to know if you're good to your word. Oh, son, let's go spend a little time in the bedroom together. Come along. No, Dad, no, I'm sorry. Oh, that's really great that you're sorry, but you still are going to have a consequence. Okay? Plan out your consequences. Guys, especially as couples, brainstorm. What are some possible things that our children could do wrong in the house? What are some possible things that they could do wrong in school? And then just be proactive and like, okay, if this situation, or perhaps it happened to someone else, if this was to happen to our house, how are we going to handle it? We need to predetermine that and plan out our consequences. Another thing, we really need to give consequences in private. Listen, you're not out to embarrass them. You should not want to humiliate them. They are little image bearers. You're not about defaming them. You're not about beating them up. They have enough insecurities as it is. So if you've got to discipline them, remove them. Get them away from where everybody can hear, everybody's listening. The only place that I would maybe change that out is if their offense was public. You might have to deal with some consequences publicly. I will tell you, this is not easy. I have had all the children in the cart going down Friendly Market. You're carefully putting all the groceries in there, and you have made a statement before you've gone to the store. Kids, we just don't have a lot of money right now. I wish I could buy you the world, but we just can't. So you can ask Jesus for anything in the store, but you cannot ask me. I just need you to sit there and be quiet. We're going to cruise through the store. If you ask me for anything, then we are all going to leave the store and go home without the groceries. And we will deal with the consequence at home. It only took, I can only remember one time that I had to roll the full cart up to the front. Humiliating for me. Apologize to the lady. I am so sorry, but I'm going to have to leave these groceries here. It's really important that I go deal with my children right now. Everybody now knows that Mom is on the warpath. So all of them are walking out to the car. It's silent as they crawl into their car seats. They may even snap their own buckles. And to be perfectly honest, The torture itself in driving in the car pretty much took care of everything. When I got home, I don't even remember which child it was, but I think they ran to the bedroom and closed the door because already their hearts were just, all of them were a wreck. And I really don't think it took, I think it was later on in the afternoon we went back and did it all over again, and all was well. But from that point on, I didn't have kids in my car. Mom, can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have it? Come on, Mom, Otter Pop, it's blue, it's my favorite. You have 5 kids in your cart doing that? Chaos, right? And it's bugging everybody else. The people walking out here, let me buy the Otter Pops for you so your kids shut up. You don't want to be that person. You represent Jesus. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be talked out of your consequence. Some of them are good. Now, I will put this, that I said there's a little appeal process in here. That appeal process is used sparingly, but there are times when you do not have all the facts as a parent, right? You're not all knowing. You're not all wise. And you may walk into a shattered vase that's been dropped on the kitchen floor, and you've assumed that they've all been horseplaying. I don't know. But so you've made your statements, and they're all in trouble. However, I do leave a little window where they can say, yes, Mom, but may I appeal? Just like in the court system. It's really rather funny hearing that coming out of a 4-year-old. May I appeal? And sometimes it's like, no, there is no appealing to this. I know what's true here. But there are times that, like, Mom, he didn't mean to do that. He slipped on the water, tripped, it went flying, it hit the fridge. He wasn't being, rebellious. Okay, I appreciate you defending your brother. Well, then let's clean up this mess and brainstorm how it's never going to happen again. But that appeal process can be, it can be overused, so don't allow that. Randy, what's the last one? I might not even do this one, but... All right, I am just touching on this fast. Some people want to know what we believe about spanking. Not many Christian parents do it in the way that God intended it to be done. A lot of spankings, lickings, take place because a parent is angry. And it just seems like the best way to relieve their pent-up whatever, right? So I am a firm believer in this particular place that we learned this stuff from. They chose to use the word chastisement, and they based it on the verse, those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children. Those who love their children care enough to discipline them. Chastisement means you're inflicting pain with a controlled force on an individual to amend or to change their inner attitude. Listen, it's not about punishing behavior. You're trying to get to the attitude behind the behavior. You're not just addressing what they're doing wrong. You're trying to get, why are you doing that? What is driving that? And in your discipleship of your kids, discipline, you're trying to get there. Now, I did like the method of spanking, and this is why. It was very, for one thing, I'm not super strong, so I'm not going to hurt. But it was very calculated. And honestly, I think if you ask my children, it was their preferred mode of discipline because it is quick and it's done, right? All right, sweetie, you made that choice. You know that's one swat. Go to the room. I'll be there in a minute. You go in there. Do you know what you did wrong? Why? Do you know why you did it? Do you know what would have been a better choice? Okay, I don't want to do this, but this is what I'm required to do because God makes me responsible. So let's just get it over with, okay? All right, Mommy, bound over, whap. Ah, Mom, you made a square on my butt. Oh, well, I'm so sorry, honey, but at least it's done. You can hug. It's over. It's over, right? Their guilt is released and gone. They have a clear conscience. I'm cool with you. You're cool with me. Let's go play. It doesn't have to be that you're relegating them to their room for hours upon hours. There is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Like, get it over with and then move on. And hopefully the next time that happens, it will not be quite so frequent. If you're going to do this, we're not going to go through all this, but I do want to look at the very last one. If you're going to spank, spankings have to be predetermined. You have got to be objective. If I'm going to do this, this is one swat, this is two swats. We're all agreeing on it, and that way you're not losing control to go, and before you know it, you've way crossed the line. If it's subjective, you are going to be perilously close to abuse, and you do not want to be the abusive parent. You want to be the loving parent. All right. I am so sorry, sweetie. You get 5 minutes.
We're just going to open it up just like we did last week, Q&A. Just, again, here's our disclaimer. We don't know much. We'll share with you what we've learned. If it's a scriptural thing, we'll try to take you to the Word. And if we don't know, we'll tell you. All right? So go ahead. Questions about anything we've discussed so far, last week, this week, stuff that maybe you saw up there that Louise didn't hit on discipline.
Or even like situations that you have arisen in your house and you just don't know what to do. Like you want to brainstorm. Okay, Maddie.
I'll start, you can close. It's going to be frustrating. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll just tell you that right off the bat. Again, remember, it's so hard for us, right? Because we're, whatever, as a parent, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, to stop and think. I'm dealing with, in your case, a 2-year-old. His entire life's experience is 2 years. 6 months from now, look at what a huge chunk of life he's lived in 6 months when you're only 2, right? So we're thinking at it with our 30 plus years of whatever, they're not even close, right? So you're literally teaching them stuff they've never experienced before. Maybe think about it from a simpler thing, right? Why do little kids especially get excited about, like, the simplest things? Like, you guys remember the old Jack in the Box, and you wind the little deal, right? And eventually he pops up out of the thing, and a kid just, like a 1-year-old that's never seen anything like that before, they just laugh. They think that's so crazy. And we get a kick out of it because it's like, why do they think that's so funny? Well, stop and think. They're only a year old. They've never seen anything like that before. That's kind of cool. This colorful little clown thing pops up out of the deal. Think about now, from all the other experiences that we're talking about. They're new, they're different, they're right. So they play off of our cues a lot. And that's why when Louise was talking about when you execute your discipline, maybe that's not the best word.
Yeah, it sounds so harsh.
When you carry out your discipline, doing it firmly but calmly, right? It's hard. It's hard. But what it does is, it doesn't freak your kid out because you're not freaking out. But you're firm with it and you're calm with it. No, we don't do it like that. You need to put the top back on like this, right? And then once you've shown them, if they're still not doing it right, whatever the consequence is, you're going to have to decide what that consequence is. You got to follow through on it. Not, okay, here we go. That's what and this is what, no, okay, you know what mommy said, and here's the consequence. Now let's try it again. I'll let you take that.
Remember, even we have coaches here, it takes a while for seventh graders to learn football, right? It is going to take your little guy a little while to figure out what is this that mom is all hung up on. And so it really, right, for little guys, it's a lot of repetition, lots of, okay, babe, this is now our second night. Let's try it again. First we do the brushing of our teeth. Then we do this. I mean, you can come up with, I don't know, you can make a cute little rhyme. You can sing a song. You can have your special little dance. I mean, it doesn't have to be torture. But it is that, look, this is what has to be accomplished. You got to put your jammies on. You got to have your teeth brushed and whatever else is happening. And we need to get there. So let's just keep figuring out how we're going to do this, because it is going to happen. Like, this is now our new norm. And he will respond to that. But you got to keep calm. You got to keep calm. And you know what, parents? Sometimes you have to give yourself a timeout. If you're losing it and you know it, when I was going through menopause, that was awful. And some women in here, you might struggle when you have your period, that you're not right, okay? So I had a thing with Kale because we were homeschooling. And he knew that something was very wrong with his mother. And the way it worked out when I was having bad days is not only that I was super hot, but I was irritable. That's all I can say. I was irritable. And so we came up, but I did find that if I went and exercised, sometimes it would bring me back down again, and I could function again. So we had a thing in our homeschooling, which was very charged, but I gave him permission. Kale, if you know that I'm losing it, just look at me and say, Mom, I will do my math if you go for a walk. And that was just it was our signal. We didn't have to have a long discussion. We didn't have to pray about anything. It was just our clue to each other. Clearly, I'm menopausing right now, and I didn't realize it. I would go out, and I would run, and his commitment to me is that he would finish whatever work he could, be it on, I don't know. I gave him a lot of freedom in that. And then we come back home, I'd have a better attitude, we start all over again. You as a parent have to figure out, what am I contributing to this mess? I need to be the adult, and I've got to figure out how to do it better too. Other question? Yeah? Is trying. Perfect. Great. Then the Lord is already being faithful there. What is happening when he's running away? Are you trying to get out the door, or is he just being bad?
Or brush his hair and getting dressed, and I'm like, come. And he's just like, wiggle his head. And I'm like, first time obedience, come now, now.
And I wouldn't keep saying, come now, now, now.
So,
So, little man?
so,
Yeah, that's straight up disobedience. I don't know. I don't know if you stick him in the corner. I don't know if he goes to bed without dessert. I don't know what you do that would make him feel the sting of it. But you got to do something. Yes, you have an idea?
I would just say make the boundaries smaller for him. So like if you have a stool in the bathroom and you're like, we have 5 things we need to do after we bow out. And you have to bathe, brush your teeth, put your pajamas on. You cannot leave this space till we're done. And if he runs, he's broken it. So then he knows that, I don't know if you have a bathroom door, but before we used to have these 2 steps right next to the bathroom. And they had to put their clothes there, do all their things. And they cannot run away because little wet babies run away, they fall hurt themselves, right? And so like you have to talk through the consequences, but also I did putty my kids. So it was if they would leave and not do that, they would get a putty and they go straight to bed. But it's like making it a smaller space. So it's
Good
not
point.
like you're chasing them. It's like, no, this is what you do after you out, this is what you have to do, da 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 da, and then that's it. Or else it could go on forever.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I do too. That's a great suggestion.
Especially when they're young like that. Again, that's their little world, right? So make it. Make the boundaries. And here it is. The door's shut. This is what we're doing. Whatever that consequence is, you got to fulfill it. And let them know what it's going to be, right? It shouldn't be a mystery. Don't make it vague. You're going to get a consequence. Well, it's vague. What does that mean? Yeah. And if that's what it is, you tell them that's what it's going to be, right? Your goal in discipline is don't lose control, whatever it is, right? You may not be into spanking, but you're into yelling. Man, don't do it. You are teaching your child that this is how we do life, and they'll become little screamers and yellers too. Look, I can tell you, I could almost guarantee you, the kids that I work with, the way they deal with getting, when someone does something against them, and the way they deal with that, I can tell you how they've been parented. If they're exploding and they're just out of control, F-bombing all over the place, and going, I think I have an idea of how things are done at home, right? And interesting enough, and again, I'm not necessarily advocating, although I do think doing it in a controlled way, a spanking is a good thing. But I'll tell you this, I've never seen a kid that I know that's been spanked properly use that as a tool when they get upset because somebody's violated them. All right, you're getting a spanking, It doesn't work that way. Because when it's done right and properly, you know that this is done in this format or in this context, right? But I also know that there's some people that can't.
Control themselves.
Because of what maybe was done to them as a child, they're afraid of being that person. And I get that. And there's other things.
Yeah, there are other things.
You don't have to use that. There's other things. In fact, spankings did not work on Clinton. He would rather get spanked than a number of other things. Because it was quick and it's over and I want to do life. Let's just, okay, if that's what needs to happen, go ahead.
Here it is.
Take it over. What we discovered was what Louise was talking about. Taking him out of the context of his siblings, his younger siblings. Go, guess what, dude? Now you're going to bed early. He would wail like somebody was beating on him because he was isolated to his bed and his siblings were out watching their favorite video or whatever, and he would just be just dying in there. And it was like, we finally found something that stings, right? So find the thing that stings a little bit.
I mean,
it may not be a spanking.
it might be as old school, where they have to write sentences at the table. Right? I know that sounds silly.
You know, I like the pull weeds thing.
Yeah.
I mean, who likes to do that? Here's your patch, dude. And when you're done, your punishment's done. But don't move until those weeds are pulled. I love that.
Or you got to go rake up all the deer poop.
Yeah.
And they're like, ooh, I don't want to touch that. Like, figure it out for you. Other questions, scenarios? Anything that you're taking away that you think, oh, I'm loving that? What?
I actually do have a question. When does discipline start? Like, we have a 5-month-old,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just like cuddly, but he does kick our neck. Like, when does discipline play a role in that arrow to what?
So I was literally just reading Stages of Development. One of the people were saying as early as 8 months you start discipline, and my other one was as early as 12 months, like to inflict a consequence. However, without a doubt, the tone of your voice can convey a message to your baby. So especially if they're doing something dangerous, right? Like I was just with my grandchildren, and the 1-year-old keeps crawling up on the little chair in order to crawl up on the table. And if she falls from the table, she's going to be hurt, right? So we have to. It's not, I mean, some people would say, well, just get rid of the chair, and you're avoiding their temptation. There's a place for that, but there's also a place for no. You have to learn to control yourself. Like, you can sit on the chair, but you're not allowed to stand on that chair. So Clinton and Mackenzie have chosen to and she knows. She'll stand on the chair and look right at Mackenzie in the eye. And she just turned 1. Look at her. And while she's looking, crawling and putting that foot on, then you know that you're dealing with rebellion. And for them right now, because she's so little, instead of spanking anywhere, like they just smack the hand a little bit. I'm not sure that it even hurts. It just sends the message, no. And then they put her back down on the floor and they do it all over again.
And along with that, I would say, teach your child at a young age, no. You know, we're in this mindset in our world today that, oh no, we don't want to say anything negative to it. You know, the whole redirecting thing. When you just redirect, you're never teaching them right and wrong. You're just taking them from one thing, and it's a distraction. Oh, let's go over here and do this over here. And we've never taught them that the reason you shouldn't do this is because of, right? Or teaching them self-control. Teach your child no at a very young age, and help them to know that no means no. You understand what I'm saying? That will save you so much heartache down the road, right? Just even at this young age, no, right? They're going to get to know. Oh, I don't want that to be the first word they learn. Might not be a bad one. Yeah.
Practically, if you're gonna carry out spanking your children, when they're small, you can kind of like control their arms and their, you know. At least my boys don't necessarily just sit there. So, any advice in terms of kind of laying out expectations for what happens when it's spanking time, and they deserve a spanking.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
Have a
actually it is.
routine. Spankings just shouldn't be like, okay, here you go, come over here. Bah, 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 bah. What is that? Right? Where's the training in that? That's you going, okay, I just want to get this over with because you just really, right? And again, this takes work.
Yeah, it is. It's tedious.
Okay. You need to go to your room, and I'll be in there in a little while to take care of it. Now, why send them to their room? Okay, for me, it was a couple things. I need to get my act together before I discipline them, and I might really be mad right now. And I do not want to discipline in anger, because that's when bad things can happen. So sending them to the room does two things. It helps me get under control. It helps them to sit and think about what they've done and to anticipate what's coming. They should. And it should be. That's part of the whole process, right? Then, once you're at a place that you need to be, you go in and you walk them through it. Okay, do you know what's going to happen? Yeah. Why? What did you do? Make them tell you what they did wrong. Okay, and you understand that Dad has to do this, because if you keep doing these kinds of things, it's not going to turn out very good. I know you don't understand that totally right now, but you just got to trust me. I love you, and I want what's best for you. And here we go. And it came when they got a little bit older, 5, 6 years old. I would also add this: you may cry, but you may not scream, because especially with dramatic ones like we had, they would. And my kids played me a few times too, so.
Definitely.
Heard them one time, heard Clinton lecturing Colton one time. Colton, when you get a spanking and Dad sends you to the room, that's when you put on extra pants. And start yelling right away, and then he doesn't hit you as hard. So I got to the point where it was like, you may cry, but you may not scream. And I don't think there was ever more than three swats was like a big deal.
And even for we did not hold them down. It's your
No,
responsibility.
that's right.
They had a little, they had bunk beds, so they had a ladder going up.
Yeah.
You have to hold the rail and stick that little rear. And if you pull it in,
That doesn't count.
Doesn't
So we go
count.
again, right?
yes.
I was gonna say, when we give puppies to our boys, if they would try to block or move or do something, you'd be like, you're gonna get one, and if you don't take it, you're gonna get two.
Yeah.
So then they get a choice if they want,
Yeah.
if you want two or you want one.
Um,
So you can get it either way.
Yeah, and you've got to decide on that. And then when it's done, right? Give them that time to cry. I'd leave the room. I'm going to be back in a few minutes. Give them that time to cry. Give them that time to, be angry with
Yeah,
you, whatever
yeah.
it is. I mean, not that they're saying stuff at you while you're walking out the door, but give them that time alone to do all that stuff. And then when you sense that they're calm, go back. Hold them.
Mm-hmm.
Remind them how much you love them. And how, man, I hate doing that. And so what are we going to do next time? We're gonna do it right next time? Yeah, Dad's going to do it right. Man, I hope so, because I just hate doing this. But I love you a whole lot. And so I'm going to do it because I want you to be the best you. If you will take the time to go through that process, and I'm telling you our experience and what we've heard from others, if you are consistently doing that, by the time they're 8, 9 years old, you're not spanking hardly at all.
It's just for serious,
It doesn't.
odd
It happens
infractions.
when they're little.
Yeah.
Because
Because you're getting their heart.
you're redirecting
you're
that heart,
redirecting
right?
their heart.
They're rebellious. They just are. We all are. And our goal is not, I just want these kids to obey. No, that's not our goal. Our goal is we're going to get there at their heart and help to train them to obey. Right? Does that help?
How about kids that are a little bit younger, like us, 2-ish, 3-ish? If I tell Luca to go to this room sometime,
No, right. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, you're
That's a little bit different. That's a little bit, again, I think you still do a routine. It's just more immediate and more, firmly taking them by the arm. Hey, look at, Daddy said no, and because you didn't obey, this is what's happening. Then maybe afterwards, look at, why did that happen? And see if he will tell you, because I didn't obey. That's right. So when you obey, things go well. When you don't obey, they're not going to go so. So find a routine that's a little bit more condensed and more on his level, but still do the routine.
And guys, parenting is not for the faint-hearted. Parenting, it's just plain hard work. It just is. There is no magical formula where and we aren't very good at disciplining ourselves even to do the hard thing. But if you can get your patterns kind of going and you get your groove on, it will get easier. It just will.
And you agree together.
And you agree together.
It's so important that you agree together. And just know this is a long-term thing, but not as intense. I'm telling you, if you will zero in on those younger years, it gets easier, especially if you're building relationship. And that's huge, to have a relationship with your kids where you're not just, how'd your day go today? Oh, great. And that's all you're getting, that you're creating opportunities for communication. And we'll maybe talk about that the last
In
time.
days to come.
They have to be intentional areas of conversation. Ours was our dinner table. That became kind of sacred ground. We made sure that we ate together at least 3 nights a week. And we were all around the table together. And it opened up our opportunity for conversation. And we didn't even know till years later when Reese did her senior project, her senior year at high school, that there's actually research on that. And all this research points to literally kids that eat a meal with their families around the table a certain number of times a week, and all the stats that show what that does for them. And we were just like,
wow.
Well, we didn't know that. It just became our thing to do. But all of the things that she discovered in her research, it was like, it's true, because it was true for us. So all I'm saying is, just know, yes, it's intense, it's hard work. You've got to be together on it. But there is let up and easier. It gets easier. It never gets where there's nothing, right? But as they get older, they've already been, the foundation, that's why we're calling this family foundations, the foundation stuff is there. And so all you got to do is many times just go back and remind, right? You give them a curfew when they're in high school, and hey, you need to be home by 10 o'clock, and it's 10:15 when they pull in. I don't have to go crazy and go, hey, you know what time it is? What did I tell you? It's like, dude, what time is it? It's 10:15. Yeah, what does that mean? It means, guess what? You're not going out for the next few nights. I don't have to yell and scream about it. And they're not going off the hinge, because that's how our life has been. That's how we've treated them. They know, man, I stepped over the line. There's a consequence. Dad's consistent. That's what's happening. And so we tell you that to give you hope.
Yeah.
And courage. And believe that, God's way works. And that's not why we do it. We don't want to do it. Well, it's effective, and there's practical things that come out of it. Okay, yeah, that's a byproduct. The main goal is God's told us to do it, we need to do it, right? That's the main thing. But keeping in mind that he wouldn't tell us to do it if it wasn't the best. And so we're doing it because God knows how he designed us. He knows what the curse has done to us, made us sinful creatures, and he's implemented these things to say, and this is how we correct that. Yes. Last question.
Yeah.
We have to do two. We have two hands.
Oh, okay.
Kids grow, what ones I eat, and like I'm thinking, one, if there's something not that bad, just one, this one would be two, or this one would be three, and as they grow, it changes. Can you give me an example of like from, I don't know, 2 to 8 years old? How does
Our
6? What are examples of one have you compared to?
well, first of all, the criteria for a spanking was always
Direct,
disobedience.
disobedience. So there
It wasn't
wasn't.
for anything else. It was for, you could call it rebellious disobedience, where it was just absolutely blatant kind of. That's when that line was crossed, so to speak.
You do not want to make that your go-to
Yeah, if you use it for everything,
all
it's like,
the time.
yeah, I believe it loses effectiveness if it just becomes something you do for everything, right? And so for us, it was blatant disobedience. I mean, you knew, it was clear, you crossed the line. That's the consequence. Now, how much? Again, I don't think that necessarily changes with age. If you have, this is what we do it for, right? We do it for blatant disobedience. Well, if it's 2 swats or whatever you want to call it. 3, I don't know, if it was really egregious or something, or, they burnt the house down. I don't know. But I think the most important thing is be creative with your discipline.
Yeah.
Um,
And listen,
So-
you got to know your kid too,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's not from a heart of rebellion.
Yeah.
Sometimes they got other things going on,
and they weren't thinking.
and they are hurting, and
Yeah.
and you don't make excuses for bad behavior, but you've got to meet them where they're at to go, oh,
And sometimes the consequence is enough for them to make right what they did, right? So for instance, let's suppose that they, ripped a page out of their brother's book, right? Okay, well, guess what? Your brother's book is ruined now, and you've been saving some money in that piggy bank, haven't you? Yeah, you need to buy him a new one. So I don't necessarily have to spank him, ground him for. No, the consequence is you need to replace what you ruined, right? So now I'm teaching him a life principle. I break it, I replace it, whether it was intentional or not. So I want my discipline to be training, not just
correcting behavior.
correcting your behavior, giving you a sting. I want you to feel this. Well, we do want them to feel it, but we want them to feel it in a way that, again, they're trained
Their
in
heart.
the process. And their heart begins to soften toward obedience. Does that help? But last
Kaimana.
one. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, quick question. At least in our circumstance, but I know this happens with a lot of other families, extended family plays a role in helping raise. I don't want to use parent because obviously, we're ideally the parent. Help raise a child. Any suggestions how to navigate that, especially when it comes to, what we talked about with discipline, or even just kind of like beliefs on parenting in general? Whether that's you're having that family member or family members raise them by circumstance or just choice. I'm wondering if there's any thoughts or suggestions on how families can kind of navigate that.
I'm gonna give you an answer, Louise. You kind of.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you an answer from a parent and a grandparent. Right? because we're on the different side.
We are those people.
So the parent answer to that is decide what you want them to do. How much discipline do you want their grandparents to do? You may not want them to do much at all, depending on their philosophy of discipline versus your philosophy of discipline. If you're not on the same page, you probably don't want them to do discipline. So what you may have to do is, hey, mom, dad, whatever, if they are, we've been having problems with this, and if they're doing that, please let us know when we come get them or whatever, so that we can, and you don't even have to go into detail, especially if you know that you don't agree with them. Just please let us know so that we can take care of it, something like that. From the grandparent side, right, we've had to learn they're not our children. They're our children's children. And so we have to say, what would you like us to do? And sometimes we don't agree.
And Randy's more gracious, and I'm probably the one that I will follow. It's kind of a reversal of roles. Just like your own kids may not agree with you, but when they're under your house, then you have to navigate that. When you are going to their house and you're going to their established family, you have to respect what God is doing there. And it is, if you are asked or invited in, then I do think as a grandparent, for sure, you can speak. But otherwise, we should be a lot more mindful to really, even if you see it, really just pray for it and pray for opportunities. Now, how do you tell your extended family? You might have to have that really awkward conversation. We love you, and we're so glad that you're a part of our families, but me and Misty, we're trying to establish our own family culture, and we're learning things at church about first-time obedience. Any way you could come on board with us and just imagine that? It has nothing to, this isn't in any way judging how you raised us or whatever you did. But in this moment, on this day, this is what we feel convicted for, and we'd just love for you to come and be a part of it. And then you're still inviting them in, but you are establishing healthy boundaries. And anyone else that has been in that situation? And
I think it's important too that, and again, I don't have any context of this, right? So if I hit something that sounds like I know something, I don't know anything. There are situations where I've, not with our kids, this is people coming to me about things, where you have to just kind of really be blunt and say, you cannot do that with our child, right? And that's the way you would have to say it. Because in that instance, they haven't understood what I just said, that we came to the understanding, these are not our children, they're our grandchildren, they're our children's children. And they are ultimately responsible before God for that, right? So if they're not getting that concept, then it may come to a point where you have to say, look, I'm sorry, you just cannot do that, right? Because that's our child. And Lord willing, it doesn't have to come to that. But I have had situations where folks are, what do I do? What do I tell them? You just got to make it very clear. It's not your child. It's my child. I want you a part of their life, but this can't be a part of the deal.
I think you have to respect. I think we had people that, we just don't drink in our house. That's our culture, right? So if I'm entrusting my child to be able to go to your house, don't disrespect me and offer them a beer. That is not, you can drink your beer, but don't respect what we are teaching our children, and we'll respect you. If not, my child's not coming to your house anymore.
Okay, we
All right.
gotta close.
Yeah.
If you have more questions, we'll stay for a few minutes, but want to try to be true to our word here. Lord, thank you. Thank you so much that you have given us, your word tells us that you've given us everything we need to know for life and godliness. And that includes the lives and the structure of godliness in our children. And I thank you, Lord, that you've given us those things. And you've also given us some leeway to develop a culture in our home, to develop those things that work best with the bent of our children. And so I pray for the parents that are here. Thank you for them, God. May they enjoy the ride of parenting. God, may they find great joy in the fact that you have blessed them with the gift of children. And Lord, in the process, may they understand the work that's before them can be work well done and well worth it in the process. So give them courage and strength and great joy, and bless us as we leave here, we pray. Give us safety as we go home. In your name, amen.
Amen.